My name is Marcey and I'm an alcoholic.
I'm Marcey.
And it's really nice to be here tonight. And I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks since Meg asked me to speak, what I was going to talk about tonight. And I toyed with the idea of just like telling someone else's story. And I couldn't find one that really seemed to fit mine, so I'm just going to tell mine, and I know it better than you guys do anyway. I come from a family of overachievers, and I have two brothers, and in my family, it almost, since the time I can remember, I felt like I almost had to qualify to be there, and I had to do things better than, and always top my brothers, or they always were trying to top me, and the difference between them and me is I was always terrified, and from the earliest time I can remember, it was always this big competition thing, and always feeling like I didn't fit, and like what was I doing there, and when were they going to figure out that really someone just dropped me off there, and I wasn't really a family member or something goofy like that. And when I was about 12 years old, I had some friends that were smoking pot and stuff like that, and I thought to myself, I really don't want to smoke pot because I don't want to be one of those kind of people. And so what I did was I smoked rhododendron leaves, and it was a start for me. And I got sort of sick. They had just been sprayed, and I did this, but it was just a step for me into the netherworld that I lived in for so many years. And I remember that I was really sick, and I was hallucinating just a little bit, and so I went and told my mom, because I thought for sure I was going to die. And then I got restricted, and it was just the start of the shit that I lived in. And first time I ever drank, I think I was 14, and I got drunk, I threw up, I loved it, and I couldn't wait to do it again. And that's how it started for me. It was kind of, I had kind of like this dual existence, and I was like my student body president, and I was on the honor society, and I was all these things that you would think were like good kid things, and I was also an active alcoholic. And while my friends worked in burger joints and did things like that, I worked in a pharmacy, and that was by design, and I didn't want to flip hamburgers, but I did think that the pharmacy job was pretty cool. And what I did through high school was I experimented with some of the samples that we had in the pharmacy, and I would take a pharmaceutical syringe, like a saline syringe, and I would inject oranges that my mom would give me every day for my lunch with vodka, and I would eat oranges all day long during school. And by the end of the day, I was pretty loaded, and I was just kind of a maintenance alcoholic. And I maybe was drinking, a fifth every couple days. And for someone that was 16, 17 years old, I was actively always having to drink. And I looked a little older, and I could always buy booze. I thought about this the other day, and at my best guess, I think I was pulled over 19 times while very drunk or high or whatever. And as much as I tried, I never got a DUI. A couple times when I was just ready to get pulled away, there would be this God thing, is what I think now, and the cops would be called out to something far more important than and I would just be told to stay there, and of course I would leave, and I didn't ever get arrested. And I think that's kind of how I was able to stay out there for so long, because left to my own devices, I was someone who shouldn't or couldn't have been able to do that. When I was in my late teens, all of 18 or something, I found cocaine, and that was nirvana for me. And I felt bulletproof, and I felt happy. And I'm talking a little bit about drugs tonight because when I got here, I was not an alcoholic, and it's a real important part of my story. And today I'm Marcey K, and I'm an alcoholic, and that's also an important part of my story. And when I got here, I was a crack addict, and I had absolutely no interest in being labeled as an alcoholic. Had absolutely no interest in being an alcoholic, a scumbag alcoholic, an icky alcoholic, an on the street alcoholic. I wanted to be a cocaine addict. And because that meant something to me, and I could stand tall and say, well, I'm a cocaine addict, you idiot. And I had this really bad attitude, and it was really pretty goofy, and it was very arrogant, which is a way that I hid behind my insecurities, just acting arrogant and acting like a big deal and legend in my own mind kind of thing. And remember that through my from the time I found cocaine, I noticed that I would use cocaine by choice more frequently, but I would have to always have alcohol to take the edge off. And I made it through college, and I kept having to change my majors because nothing fit. And what would happen is really I couldn't stay sober long enough to make it to class. And so by the time someone said, you really can't do this, I have to do something else. And so it wasn't that I wasn't smart enough or good enough or anything enough. I was just too drunk or too high or too something enough, and I couldn't be focused. I noticed that as my drinking and drug use escalated, my life became filled with assholes. And I never did anything wrong, and I was the nicest person, and I could have been your best friend, and I was the best employee and the best student and the best everything, and everyone in my life was an asshole. And and I never ever thought for a second that I could have anything to do with that, or that it could have anything to do with the fact that I was stealing people's stuff and not showing up for work and not going to class and doing creepy things to friends or anything that could have possibly anything to do with me. And I started doing a lot of blaming. And I remember one time when I got fired from my first job, I was in my early 20s right out of college, and my boss had the nerve to suggest that I might be an alcoholic. And I was so appalled and couldn't believe it, and I called my father. I said, "Can you believe this guy?" He was like, "No, that's awful." And he really commiserated with me and said, "God, that must have been horrible for you." And I said, "Yeah, it was horrible. Should I sue him?" And I really thought that might be something that would be reasonable. That how dare he? And you know what? I was actively alcoholic. And it's really funny when I look back now at how crazy your mind gets or how crazy my mind got, and how I was just so anything that anyone else had, I figured was mine for the taking. And I thought about this a lot, and I never meant to take your cars. Never. I never meant to get into your medicine cabinets in your bathroom and do a shopping. I never meant to take money from your purse. I never meant to sleep with your husband. I never meant to leave your kids unattended. I never meant not to go to work. I never ever meant to steal out of tellers, like the cash machines and places. I never ever meant to write bad checks. And all of those things were things that I did because of the disease of alcoholism. And for me, once I took the first drink, pill or fix, I was off to the races, and I had no choice. On page 553 of the big book, it says, and I'm going to just open this up and read it because I'll screw it up when I'm trying to be so slick and quote it. It says in here, and this is the first thing that ever meant anything to me in this big book. And it says, the only real freedom a human being can ever know is doing what you ought to do because you want to do it. And when I got here, I absolutely had no freedom, and every single thing in my life centered around getting loaded. I couldn't go to a concert because I'd run out of drugs. I couldn't go to the store. I had to make a deal with myself. Like I'd have to set an alarm clock outside of my shower, and I would set it for 5 minutes, so I would shower, and then as soon as the alarm went off, I'd get out of the water and get loaded again. And it was just this whole thing. I couldn't leave my house for any reason. I couldn't go anywhere. I remember that this one Mother's Day in my early 20s, I was supposed to go and see my parents. And I met them at a restaurant. I had been up for 8 or 9 days. And I fell asleep in the bathroom, Happy Mother's Day, in a restaurant. I crawled up on the counter and just fell asleep. And I didn't want to hurt my mom like that. I didn't want to be an asshole, but I didn't have any choice. And I didn't have any choice because this disease owns me. And once I pour the wet on, I'm done. And anything decent that I have become today is out the window because I have no choice once I put anything into my body that is mood altering at all. In my early 20s, I had an accident and was temporarily paralyzed. And in retrospect and in talking to doctors now, it's probably some sort of drug-related stroke. At that point, I was sure it was medical malpractice and nothing to do with me, but it was some sort of deal, and I was temporarily paralyzed, and I had access at that point because of the severe pain I was in, to all these pain drugs. And so being the pharmacist that I am, and that's also a joke, I got real creative in my pain management and got further into this, the depths of hell, again, that I lived in. And I remember that I would sit by myself and just be loaded and be lost and not know what to do about it, and not feel like I had any options, and not feel like anyone cared or anyone knew, and be afraid to tell anyone about that. And just feel like, it wasn't fun to get loaded anymore. It was a way of life. It wasn't like, let's go to a party and have a few drinks. It was like, let's get wasted. And my friends got kind of bored with it because they're not like us, and they didn't think it was that slick. And then I remember that, I kind of got over that, and I got a job. I moved to Salt Lake City on geographical, and remember that I got in my car, and I took $300 or $400 worth of Coke and a half case of beer, and I was driving from Seattle to Salt Lake City, and I ran out in like Tacoma or something, and that's not very far. And so I turned around and went back and did the same thing for about a week, and I finally got to Pendleton, Oregon, and that is the armpit of America. And I was out of drugs, and I was out of money, I was out of beer, and my options didn't seem very good. And Pendleton, Oregon was not where I wanted to stay. And so I ended up calling my parents. They wired me money. Came down here and I got a job. And things looked good. And my idea was, it wasn't me that had the problem, it was Seattle. And if I could just get away from those bad influences, and I had this idea that I was going to come down here and get like really Mormon and go to church and just be really nice. It lasted for about a day. And then I was saying to myself, Self, you better get yourself something to drink. And that's what I did. And I remember I went to a bar here, I think it was like a Bogart's or I don't even know what it was called, something like that. And I was like buying drugs from the bartender because I didn't know where to score in Salt Lake. And I remember feeling really grateful that it wasn't like some undercover guy or anything like that. And so I was off to the races in Salt Lake City. And it's not hard when you're someone like me to get connected and find out where to go and how to score and everything. And so, I was just off and running. And pretty soon, surprise, surprise, I got fired again. Oh, there's assholes here in Salt Lake. And it's really funny. I got this other job. After I got fired from that job, I did a real good dance, and I got hired by another company, a pharmaceutical manufacturer. I said to myself, this is good. And it was a deal where, a little bit, one for them, two for me. And ultimately, surprise again, I got fired. And this is the funniest part to me, because it took until I was 5 years sober to get the idea that it was justifiable for an outside sales company to expect me to leave my house. And I hadn't left my house in like 60 or 90 days, and I got fired for that because they wanted me to go outside and do my job. And I didn't really, and every year on my birthday, around my birthday, I say to my sponsor, I really ought to take those guys to court, man. They screwed me over. And she'd say, why don't you wait another year? And maybe it'll make a little more sense to you. You'll get some clarity. And I'd be really pissed off, but I was willing to do what my sponsor said, so I'd wait another year. And at year 5, I realized that it's a reasonable thing for them to think I would do the job I was paid to do. Right after I lost that job, one of my friends, who I owe a great debt to today, called my father, and I said, and I was really, really at a bad place, and where I knew I couldn't quit on my own volition, and I knew that there was no way that I could do it different by myself. I mean, how many times I said I'm never going to do this again, and I had started giving drugs away, and it started like not even wanting to use it all and just like get it away from my life, but I couldn't stay quit for very long. I quit a million times, but I just couldn't quit for very long. And I remember that there was a knock at my door, and I hadn't showered for like days. I was half dressed, but I had all these drugs in my kitchen, and was cooking up all this Coke, and I had this beer out, and I could hear my dad say, Marcey, open the door. And I thought to myself, do I get dressed or do I hide the drugs? Hide the drugs. And so I hid the drugs, and I answered the door to my father, who's a man of great integrity, filthy, stinking pig, in filthy clothes, whacked out of my brains. What do you want? To my father. And he said, honey, I want to help you. And it made me really mad. because I had big plans to get really high that day, and he came in and he wanted to help me. How ridiculous, get out of here. And I looked at him, I said, help me with what? And he said, and he said, do you have a problem? I said, what kind of problem could I possibly have? What are you doing here? Again, you just have to get the visual. It was terrible. And I finally said, what are you doing here? And he said, your mom and I are going to help you. I want you to come home with us. And I don't know why, but I did. Probably didn't have any choice, but it sounds good now. 9 years later, I did. I went home with my parents, and they stayed home with me for 3 days and cured me. And they didn't let me out of their sight. I didn't drink or use drugs for 3 days. I was really sick. My bones ached. I had, from both ends, I was sick. And I was really going through withdrawals and feeling really bad. And on day 3, they cured me. I said, God, I feel great. They left for work, and I went right to the dealers. And then they got home at 5, and I made sure I was home at 5 to 5, and I sat there and just with Jones the rest of the night and say, yeah, this is great. I'm gonna get it. And so every single day for about 2 weeks, I would just go back and forth, and I would just make sure I was home by the time they got home, and they had cured me. It was the awesomest thing. And I didn't need to go to AA, and I didn't need you folks. I didn't need this program, and everything was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, and I forgot to mention that during this, leading up to this, I had written close to about $22,000 in bad checks. And my mother and father paid them for me, which is really nice. And I was very creative with a checkbook. And this is in about maybe a month period of time. I'd written this 22 grand, and so my dad paid them. And in the next 3 weeks that I was doing this, or 2 weeks, whatever it was, he'd written another 12 grand worth of bad checks. And I was paying my brother $5 a day to take the return bank things and make sure he got them out of the mail before my mom and dad got home. All of my mail. I would just pay him $5 a day and have him hide them in the house. And so on this day, I came home, and my mom and dad were sitting at the counter, and I had all these checks, and my mom and dad were just kind of sitting there, and my dad just looked at me and said, I don't even know who you are today. And I said, I don't care what you think. And, it was just that ism that had me. And so they decided at that point, my dad left, he was real angry, and I convinced my mother that what I should do is I should go to San Diego. And I should go and hang out with my aunt and lay on the beach and get my head together. And what I was thinking in my head is I can go across the border, get some Blue Valium and some tequila and lay on the beach. And we had got my airline ticket, and I had my bag packed, and my dad drove in the driveway and kiboshed the whole thing. I was really mad. And the next morning they took me to treatment. And I didn't go into treatment, or I didn't stay into treatment. I didn't do any of that kind of crap because I thought I had a problem. I just thought that they had no checks left, and I needed to get some sleep. So when I got here, when they talk about being emotionally and spiritually and financially and all that kind of bankrupt, that was it. That was me. And remember that I went into treatment, and I didn't want to be there. I was really angry with my parents. And I was angry with everybody because, again, I didn't have a problem. I just ran out of checks. And I should have balanced my checking account. Or I should have worked more. I should have done something, but it had nothing to do with the drugs or the alcohol. When I got into treatment, after I was there for, I think it was like a 30-some day treatment program, and after I was there for a while, I realized that I needed to do it different. And then maybe there was some hope for someone like me. Maybe. I remember that, so I stayed in treatment. I got real honest, and I was really just, emotionally wiped from doing that. So the day after I got out of treatment, I did get to go to San Diego, and I got loaded the next day because I needed to chill. All the treatment stuff was so hard. And then I remember that I came back here, and I wanted to get honest, but I was afraid that a loser like me, if I told you that I got loaded like 2 days after treatment, that no one would want to hang with me, and I didn't know what to do. So what I did do was I decided that I should get honest about it. But I didn't want to cop to the fact that I got loaded in San Diego. So what I did was I got loaded here, so I could just be honest about it. And so I went to my counselor. I said, yeah, I got loaded yesterday, and boy, I'm sorry I blew it. And And then I had sobriety from that point on. Now, there was one big problem. It was that ego thing again. And I could not think in full sentences. I could not get the idea of what this book told me to do. I didn't know what work the steps meant. I didn't know anything to do, and I was too afraid to ask. And I didn't want people to think, God, what a jerk. And so I would try, I'd make sure that no one would know I was home, and I'd sit at my, in my house and try to, kind of read through this book, and I couldn't get it. And I'm not stupid, but I couldn't get it. And I didn't know what to do, and I stayed sober for 17 months without working any steps, without doing anything, every time I had a sponsor who told me to do something, I'd get a new sponsor. And what happened is, after 17 months, I left an AA meeting and I went and I got drunk. Didn't use drugs, I just went and I got drunk. And I got drunk because I didn't feel like AA could work for me. And the deal was, I wasn't working the program, and I was too afraid to ask. Well, what happens is, for me, is when I went out with 17 months of sobriety, or 17 months of being dry, is probably more appropriate, and I had a head full of AA and a belly full of booze. It was a really shitty combination. And I felt like I was in that in-between place where my skin didn't fit again. And so came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and a funny thing happened. I got to drink for just a little while longer because a well-meaning person in this fellowship decided to call my boss and tell him that I was drinking again. And and I got real caught up in that anonymity thing, and they screwed me, and I think I better drink a little more. And the reality was that that person meant well, and the person just was trying to help. And today I don't really care. But that allowed me the opportunity to drink for a couple of weeks longer over that stupid resentment. When I got back here, I was real willing because I was really afraid and I didn't want to die. And what I can tell you is that that's what it was like, and kind of what happened. What it's like for me now is entirely different. When I got here and people would say that first things first crap, and they'd say, one day at a time, easy does it, and all that, it used to really drive me crazy. And what I can tell you is that they always just say this dumb thing that, if I would have got everything I wanted, I would have sold myself short. Well, you know what? It's really true. I have the most awesome life today that you can imagine. Maybe some of you guys won't think it was awesome at all, but compared to where I came from and the things that I got today, it's like the best. Everything that's good about who I am, I learned by watching people just like you in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know how to work and do an honest day's work. I didn't know how to be a friend. I didn't know how not to steal. I didn't know how to be honest. I didn't know how to show up. Didn't know how to be a decent human being. I knew how to take. And I learned by watching you guys. And I watched real quietly. Today I think that by God's grace, I'm someone I'd want to be around. Somebody asked me, a filthy, stinking drunk, to come and speak in front of you tonight. Now, I don't know about you folks, but when I was using, I used to get asked to leave. I never got asked to go anywhere. I got asked to leave. And I haven't got asked to leave in a long time. I've had the same job for 10 years. There's assholes there. But, it's a little different. But it's a different deal. Today, I work the steps. I've had the same sponsor for just under 9 years. And there's a reason for that. My sponsor knows who I am. And in my brain, I can twist and pull and tug and make exactly what I want to have right, fit. But my sponsor can help me sort out through all that crap. And I can't do it on my own a lot. I just can't. It's not that I don't want to, but I got the committee going and saying, yeah, do it. And I can't sort that out. I have good friends today. I have people that I know really care about me. And I haven't, when I got here, like my higher power was, whoever had the biggest bag or the bartender or something. That was my higher power. That's who I paid homage to. Today, I have God in my life. And I haven't bought anything for these friends. I haven't bought them with drugs or alcohol. I haven't bought them because of something I stole. I haven't done anything dishonest to get them to like me. And I feel like, I can be who I am today. I'm not afraid anymore. I don't have to get loaded today to exist. And the power of this program has given me that freedom. And I'm sober today, not because I have to be, but because I want to be. I had an experience, I travel a lot now for my job, and I had an experience about 6 months ago that I was so bowled over by, I couldn't believe it. And this flight attendant came and she set this glass of wine on my tray. I said, I didn't order that. She goes, oh, you can have it anyway. I said, well, I really didn't order it. I don't care for that right now. And she goes, you ordered the wine. I said to her, I'm positive I didn't. And she said, I'm sure you ordered the wine. And she's getting like all ticked off at me. I said, well, even if I did, I don't want it. And she said, I'd really like you to drink it. I said, I don't think you would. And I said, let's just call it good at that. So she took the wine away. She like flung it and kind of like almost spilled it. And I just kind of thought to myself, where was she when I was first getting sober? I mean, if someone would have came up to me, in my first couple of months of sobriety and said, drink this, I would have said, okay, God, I'll just do what you say. Fortunately, at that point in my life, I was able to say, I really don't have to. When I got here, I had this idea about God. And the God of my understanding was kind of like this cosmic Monty Hall, And I was always looking for the big deal of the day. And it would be, if I can ace this test, I'll never get loaded again. If I'm not pregnant, I'll never do that again. If I don't get a DUI, I'll never drive drunk. And I'd make all these deals that I would like break instantly. But it was like this big deal thing, and I kept getting zonked every time. And today I have a kind and loving God that's in my life. I know that today it's really important for me to maintain my spiritual condition. What that means is that I'm kind of a sport liar, and sometimes I'm a salesman, and sometimes I just want to lie. It's like I don't use drugs anymore. I don't steal. I don't do all that. I don't drink, and sometimes I just want to lie just because I don't want to be good. And what I've noticed is that sometimes even when the truth is better, I just want to tell you a lie. And I've been doing that less and less, and I figured that, God, I don't do the other things. Maybe that's okay. And what I realize is that in order for me to maintain my spiritual condition, which guarantees me that I don't have to get loaded again, I gotta tell the truth. I gotta be honest, And I remember I was at a meeting right after I got sober the second time, and this is when I was still hating all the slogans. And there was this thing that said. Everyone kept saying, one day at a time, one day at a time. And I thought, God, how can I not use one day at a time? And I would have never believed when people would get those like 30-day chips, I thought, yeah, liar, right. And I just sit there and say, yeah, sure. And I didn't know how you could do this one day at a time thing at all. And I went to this meeting, and everyone kept saying, one day at a time, one day at a time. My aunt picked me up from the meeting. She said, how was it? I said, it was such crap. Everyone in there just said, oh, just one day at a time. I said, it's such a lie. And I remember we went out for Chinese food, and I got my fortune at the end of it. And I opened it up, and I still have this fortune, and it said, success will only come if you take it one day at a time. And I said, all right, one day at a time. I've had some really neat things happen in sobriety. When I got here, I think I had like 11 or 13 felony check writing charges against me. And I thought for sure I was going to the big house. And I was a little nervous about it, and it was something that I could be anxious and upset about in my first 2 years of sobriety. And one day, after going to court all these times, and I filed bankruptcy, and my mom was like she worked at the bankruptcy court, and I had to go in front of all her friends, and the judge said to me, well, Miss Bradshaw, why did you write all those bad checks? I'm a cocaine addict, Your Honor. Excuse me? I'm just kind of mumbling, and finally, I had to say it in front of my mom's peers, and it was one of those kind of things that you really don't want to do. And right about that time, my lawyer said, "You're probably going to get arrested today." And the company that you wrote all those bad checks to is probably going to have somebody here, you're probably going to get arrested. I remember that day, no one showed up. And those charges just kind of went bye-bye. And I never heard about it again. And I don't know how that happened. But I know that today I'm grateful that that's not part of my story. You know, my story's pretty boring. You know, middle-class family, middle-class kid, middle-class drug use, drinking. But it's my story. And the hell I knew and the fear I knew was what kept me drinking. Today, what I know is that for me, that a drug's a drug, and I'm an alcoholic. And that, you know, alcohol and drugs are not my problem. If alcohol and drugs were my problem, then today, over 9 years later, I'd have no problems. And it's the ism that kills me on a daily basis. What I know is that there's nobody, myself included in this room, that ever has to get, you know, drunk or high again if they follow the simple directions in this book. Period. Doesn't have to happen. And it can happen if you want it to. Anyone here can leave this meeting and go and have a drink by choice, but it doesn't have to happen. And there's clear and simple directions right in here. You know, I'm a really big advocate of working with a sponsor. I'm a really big advocate of at least having a step meeting in your repertoire of meetings that you go to so you can get the steps pounded into you on a weekly basis. And what I know is that if someone like me can do it, it's got to be pretty simple. I know that one thing that happened to me is that I met a fellow in sobriety who's also an alcoholic, and we were able to get married, and unfortunately we weren't able to have any children. And so in the last 2 years, we got to adopt 2 kids. And I got to tell you, out of everything that I've talked about here tonight, that is the biggest miracle of all, that someone like me, you know, who's not, left to my own devices, is not a decent human being, is entrusted with these 2 little lives. And I'm the one who gets to help them have character. When I got here, I didn't have any character. You know, how do you give what you don't have? You know, and today, what I know is that I have character, and I'm giving it to those 2 little kids. And we were in we had to, you know, I was really, it's kind of intense when you go through that whole thing, the whole procedure to adopt, because people get to come in your house, and they get to decide if you're good enough to be parents. And then they get to look at your bank records, and you get to go down to the FBI and be fingerprinted and do all this stuff. And you know, I went down to the FBI, and I wasn't that scared. I was a little scared. I wasn't that scared. And you know, and when that guy came, and I got to tell him about who I was, you know, I told almost the complete truth. I did a little sin of omission, but I didn't lie. I didn't necessarily bring up all the stuff, but I didn't lie. And the deal is that we qualified. And when we got this first little boy, it was one of those God things. And we got this little 2-year-old who has a mother who, you know, I pray to God every night gets to make it to this room one of these days. And she's one of us and just hasn't found God's grace yet. And when we got this little boy, he and I connected on, I mean, just, it's like I believe that this is, you know, 100% of who I'm supposed to be a parent to. And we got him, and almost instantaneously we had to start finding his mother in court to keep him. And for 2 years, we went through this whole deal of whether we get to keep this little kid. And it was scary and painful and terrifying. And in January of this year, we won. And I have to tell you that, you know, I got on my knees in the Cincinnati airport and thanked God for that miracle, that someone like me got to be a parent to this kid. And during this whole thing, we were supposed to have gone to court for him in November of 1995, and I got a phone call in mid-October from another woman who said, "There's a baby in Park City. Make a phone call." I said, "Oh God, I can't make that phone call. I'm just keeping my head above water. I'm just trying to stay sober. I can't do this. I don't have anything else to give." And I called my sponsor, which is what I do with most everything, good and bad. My sponsor said, "Marcey, what have you learned in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous?" I said, "I give." "What?" "Help me here." And she said, "You've learned to show up." I said, "Oh yeah, I show up." So she said, "Go to Park City. Let God decide what you're supposed to do." And we went to Park City, And this young woman had interviewed hundreds of couples, and there's nothing special about me and Mark. We're not the greatest to look at. We don't have the most money. We don't have anything that's great. But you know what? She called us that night. She picked us to take her baby. And in January of 1996, we got a little girl. And I got to tell you, last night at 3:30 in the morning when she was up, and I got to hold her against my chest, and I got to be her mommy last night at 3:30. I thank God for God's grace. And I thank God for the person that I am today. Because someone like me, before I got sober, is not someone that you want with your kids, anybody's kids. And I look at my life, and I'm not an eternally happy person. I'm not, a person who just is so grateful all the time. But there's so much good in my life that I can't believe it. And I feel like it's really important for me to say that, from where I came, it was crappy. Where I lived was crap. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I can tell you that if I could do it by myself, I wouldn't be in Alcoholics Anonymous. If I could drink, if I could have a few drinks, I would just have a few drinks. I never once in my life ever drank for the taste. I drank for the effect. I never one time, did anything like that. I'm not normal. I cannot do it like they can. And I'm obsessive, I'm compulsive, and it's only because of this program that I have any kind of a life. If I could say anything to anyone is, don't give up before the miracle catches up to you. This program has given me, as I said, things that I could have never even hoped for. My parents all of a sudden got really smart when I got sober. Everything just kind of righted itself. And today I'm someone that I would like to be around. Today I'm someone who can show up. Today I'm a mom. Today I'm not someone who's going to get thrown in jail. I don't ever panic when I'm driving my car, like what if I get pulled over? I don't have to drive all contorted, trying to hold the wheel steady. I don't have to do those things. And God, it's so much easier to stay sober than it was to get loaded. That getting loaded crap is hard work. And I don't have to remember the lies I told. I don't have to remember so I can keep it straight. I don't have to worry. And I really feel lucky and fortunate that this program found me. I remember right before I was getting sober, I would see people and say, "Hey, aren't you a friend of Bill's?" I'm like, "Bill who?" "Oh, you must not be." I'm like, and I didn't get it, and maybe God was just getting me ready. Today I'm a grateful friend of Bill's, and I try to go to meetings in the different cities that I go into, and I travel enough that I'm actually starting to see people, and I have certain meetings in different cities, and there's AA everywhere. And I remember on my 4th birthday, I was in Tucson, and I got up in front of those people, and earlier I said, I kind of like to lie, and I got up right in front of this group, and they said, "Well, get a chip here." And it was my 4th year, and I wanted to take a 10-year chip. And I just figured that, what? I could do it. I'm in Tucson. No one here is going to know. I'll just keep it. And so I was up there, and they said, "How many years?" And I said, 4. It's like that moment, kind of a moment of truth for me. And today what I can tell you is I have exactly, 9 years. And I don't want any more. I don't want any less. But today I'm exactly where God would have me be, and that's all right with me. Thanks for letting me share.